we go. Hi, everybody. I'm Bob Goodwin, the president of Career Club. If you're not familiar with Career Club, please check us out at career.club, where we're using proven sales methods and tools to help people like you find a career that matters to you. This is a live event, so we're streaming on LinkedIn Live right now and on YouTube. So as part of that, please let us know where you might be calling in from. And if you've got questions or comments for our guests, we would love to hear them. I would also encourage you guys to follow me on LinkedIn and follow Career Club. We are posting content all the time and would love to engage with you there. I also want to take a moment to thank my colleagues, Joey and Heather, who are the magic behind making sure these events come off smoothly. So thank you guys so much for that. And with that, I am really pleased to welcome our guests today. You know them as the CPG Guys, Sri Rajagopalan and Peter V.S. Bond. Guys, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
No.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I am doing well. Thank you very much. And we'll kind of get the, there we go.
Almost got there.
There we go. Peter aspires to be Sri, but there we go.
I do actually. I want to be. Listen. He's got a charmed life. He's got a wonderful wife, wonderful daughters. He's got a good life, and he's awesome. Very much an inspiration to me.
Sri, welcome. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having us in the first place. As long as Judge gets to 61, I think it'll be a charmed life. 4 to go.
So where are you calling in from today, Sri?
I'm actually in Chicago. And Peter's going with me to the game on Saturday, Red Sox at Yankees. Hopefully, the way it's spaced out, we're 8 games away. Hopefully we'll see 61 right there.
And did I hear numbers 56 and 57 happened last night, Sri?
That was last night with the 10th inning win.
Somehow we turned into an ESPN baseball podcast, so we'll reel back from that.
Welcome to our world.
No, I am good with live, and you just sort of go with it. To help folks just get to know you guys a little bit better, just a little bit of an icebreaker section that we like to do on our LinkedIn Lives. Sri, we'll go with you first, if you don't mind. So, born and raised?
Born Colombo, Sri Lanka. Southeast corner. It's not India. Most people ask me, is it India? It's not. It's a separate country. Island, a little bit like Hawaii, I would say 85 degrees all year long. Beautiful, pretty.
Nice.
Great place to visit. Economically, had a major downturn the last 6 months. Not the best place to visit therefore today, but hopefully back in a year's time.
Yeah, is that where you grew up as well?
No, raised though. My mom is Sri Lanka. My dad is actually Indian, South Indian. So we were raised in the northeast of India, in a place called Kolkata, India. Therefore, I speak many Indian languages. So India, as you know, is a diaspora of 25 odd states. Each state has its own language. It was never meant to be one country. That's a big statement I'm making. I'll probably get some hate mail for that, but each state has its own language, food, and I just know so many languages as a result.
So languages, a little bit, but wow, I don't know about, what did you say, 26 states? Oh my goodness.
Each one is different, Bob.
Where'd you go to school, Sri?
I went to grade school in Calcutta, India, to a French Catholic school my entire life. Private school. It was called La Martiniere for boys. So from the name you can take, I was uniform based and very disciplined. You got to polish your shoes every morning. Your hair cannot be longer than your collar. If it did, at lunchtime, a barber would come and they would shave off the sides and embarrass you.
Wow.
I won't lie, I probably received a caning or two from the principal in my life as well. So then I went to Virginia Tech.
Hokies, come on.
True Hokie. Follow the college football program very well. Involved, still peripherally involved in alumni work, but Virginia Tech is deeply in my roots as a result. And got hired by IRI from there. And the rest is
an engineering degree?
No, business.
Oh. Cool. Awesome. And then, so you actually anticipate another question, just a little bit, just briefly about your career. You said IRI.
Yeah, so I actually got recruited out of on-campus interviewing all the way from Virginia to Connecticut. I'd been in the Northeast, but the only place I knew was New York City.
Yeah.
Connecticut was a little bit of a culture shock for me coming from farm Blacksburg, Virginia. And I ended up meeting this guy first day on the job. And we became friends. We've stayed in touch. And over time, I moved over to Pepsi. I raised my hands to be an on site drive 45 miles each way, Somers, New York, that nobody else wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out to be a blessing in disguise as Pepsi hired me. And that transition from service provider to a brand was a big, huge boost in my life. And it changed my perspective on how brand equity is driven, because I was with IRI, I was primarily focused on metrics, analytics, numbers, but it gave me the foundation to the day in my day job that I use, why share is important, why distribution matters, why a planogram is still relevant and triumphs everything else. And then from Pepsi, I spent about close to a decade with Pepsi, but they rotated me through different functions, locations, eventually spent time at Texas, dollar drug convenience channel sales, then got pulled out by a mentor. I know we're going to discuss mentorship later, so I'm going to save it for that section, but got pulled out by what I would call a mentor who asked me to be very uncomfortable in startup e-commerce for Frito-Lay. I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not a digital native, but I embraced it knowing that when somebody senior, a chief customer officer asks you to do it, you give it a shot. I did. The rest I would say is a little bit of career history, because I got to join e-commerce at the early inception when it was still a buzzword. Not that it still isn't a buzzword in many places, but so I've got to experience the build of e-commerce, I would say, in grocery from literally day one, I would say, or maybe day 50, as
Yep.
opposed to many coming in now. Helped start it up for Frito, then jumped across over to Johnson and Johnson because I want to come back to the Northeast. That worked perfectly with my family's goals as well of moving back to the Northeast, being in and around Manhattan. Did that help launch e-commerce and the entire initiative for Johnson and Johnson consumer? Moved over to Revlon so I could experience living in New York City. A couple of years in, of course, the pandemic hit us pretty hard. Decided to go do my own thing for a year. I called on March 8th, I left Revlon, decided to do my own brand. I called this guy on March 13th, I believe, when the pandemic, when New York City went from there's no such thing as a pandemic to we're in full lockdown, and said, hey, what are we going to do with all our commute time? Why don't we start making YouTube videos? And we'll share the details of how CPG Guys got launched. But so I've been around in CPG, I would say about 26 years. Now, please don't date me. I probably gave it away a little bit there, but
Started
I've
when he was 5. That's
I've
yeah.
had the fortune of starting my career with the root canal of the brick and mortar business through IRI and then Pepsi and selling hard. And I'm one of the few that probably has had the fortune through mentorship of being rotated. Even I spent a year in IT as a CIO for go to market. Somewhere down the line, some mentor thought it's a great idea because I have tech experience that I could be a good fit in ecom, which of course today I would laugh at that, but it did make a difference because I'm now the guy that can speak AI and ML more than other salespeople can, which opens doors. Retail media, kind of my 1 year training running an own brand means I now know how to do CPC marketing, probably more than many other brands because brands rely on agencies. And I've gone into Facebook and Google and Amazon third-party platform and run CPC campaigns myself. So, people have been good to me. The best mentors are those that have given me the opportunity to showcase myself, and my career has been a mixed blend, some success. My mentors have also encouraged me that failure is okay as long as you learn from it and grow from it, which I've had the fortune. And 26 years later, here we are, call this guy, and 2.5 years later, we've got this thing called CPG Guys.
That's super cool. And I'm looking, we're going to double click on that, as you said, in just a minute. Peter, so it sounds like all roads do lead through IRI because that's in part how I met you through your beautiful wife, right? Because we were colleagues together at IRI here in Cincinnati. But why don't you help people just get to know you a little bit, the born and raised, where'd you go to school, a little bit about your career and family.
Yeah, I was born in London, Ontario. My parents were both academics. They were teaching at University of Western Ontario. Spent my adolescence living all over Canada. when ninth grade rolled around, my mother decided to ship me off to boarding school outside of Philadelphia, where
Go
her
figure.
brother
Why
had
would she
attended.
do that?
I know. So I spent 4 years at an all-male boarding school in rural Pennsylvania. Woo. I attended college at Wesleyan University in Connecticut, where I earned my degree in the politics and psychology of terrorism, and then went into the business world thereafter. I spent a couple years working in insurance, and then went and got my MBA at NYU, and then began my career. A couple years on the brand side. I worked both for Hart's Pet Care and later Playtex Products, now Edgewell. That's when I joined IRI. I'd been participating in the very first Safeway SCOP project as they were rolling out category management in the mid-90s, and I'd caught the attention of some people, and Playtex was getting ready to launch category management resources to compete with some of the other manufacturers in their categories, and they'd heard of me through the SCOP project. So I ended up going there, and then IRI also heard of me through that program, because if anyone who knows SCOP from Safeway knows that IRI was a primary data supplier. So I ended up joining IRI. I spent a total of 9 years there. I left after 3 to join Priceline as they were launching their short-lived grocery division. I then went to do a couple of startups. One of them that I was at got acquired by IRI, so I like to say I was forcibly repatriated. I spent 6 more years, 3 at PepsiCo, where I reunited with Sri, and then 3 running the Campbell's Soup business before I moved to dunnhumby in Cincinnati. I spent 4 years working with manufacturers there before moving to Woonsocket, Rhode Island, where I led category and brand personalization for CVS Health. So as Sri likes to remind me, the fact that I'm the guy responsible for the 6-foot-long register receipt you get when you buy a bottle of soda will be what lingers on my tombstone, no matter what I do the rest of my life. To which I typically respond only if the tombstone's 6 feet tall, because otherwise the receipt, it won't fit. And then more recently, I joined Fetch Rewards, the mobile loyalty platform with about 17 million users. I'm willing to bet that quite a number of the people who are listening to this LinkedIn Live session are probably pretty familiar with it. I've got a wife who you met when you were both working at IRI in Cincinnati, and I've got a 3.5-year-old daughter who is, as I like to refer to her, a 3-nature. And my passion, much like Sri, is if you listen to our podcast, you know that really the podcast is an educational CPG retail podcast disguised. The real purpose is so that we can just bicker between each other over who's better, the Dodgers and the Yankees. And in the off season, we bemoan the fact that our team didn't win the World Series this year. Sri's been bemoaning that a lot longer than I have, because I got mine a couple of years ago. But we'll see what's going on. But that's my core.
So we're going to get into the heart of it, I promise. But every listener is dying to know, what does VS stand for? Very sexy, very smart. What is it?
Well, I like the first one you said, but a lot of people, my wife will tell you it's very stodgy. I think Sri once said very smarmy. I don't know what he meant. But it's actually, so it's really interesting. It's actually Van Sicklen. It's Dutch. I trace my ancestry back to prior to the establishment of the United States of America. Ferdinandus van Sicklen was a Dutch privateer. That's not a fancy word for a pirate. That was condoned by the government, and he lived in New Amsterdam. And so if you go out to Brooklyn, you'll see a whole bunch of Van Sicklen subway stops, and you'll see a big cemetery full of dead relatives of mine.
Awesome. So, okay. So the bickering is fun. I'm just having fun.
But we only stay together for the kids. We talk about this very openly.
So Sri, you kind of started going down the road of in early 2020 in March. It's funny. I think on March 8th, I was in the city and I had my last face-to-face appointment before everything went at Morgan Stanley in Times Square. And my afternoon appointment got canceled and I was on a plane home on the 8th. So it was like that date is in my mind. But you guys, God bless you, have just absolutely been killing it. with your podcasting. It's amazing. The quality of guests, the frequency. One of the things that I've really been interested to watch is the brand franchise has kind of grown, right? With FMCG in Europe, right? Risa is doing scoops, and you've got some other things going on. But, Sri, you kind of started getting it, but just sort of the original idea, besides to talk baseball.
Yeah, so I'll tell you how we got started. But first, now that Peter's revealed his ancestry, we're going to start dropping Dutch words in here from now. So we'll start with the easy one. Gode Morgen, everybody. That's good morning in Dutch. And you're going to hear that often on the CPG Guys.
The only Dutch thing you need to know, from my view, is Virgil van Dijk, because I'm a giant Liverpool fan, and he is the backbone of their defense and on the Dutch national team. But off you go, Sri. Go ahead.
I once watched Ozzy Osbourne saying, I'll love some fondue. So we'll attach that with it. Peter, we're going to ask you for fondue recipes later. But when the pandemic hit us, Bob, I called Peter and said, hey, we had chatted about co-authoring articles on the CPG industry and retail and the transformation a while ago. We wanted to do that in 2019. Our respective employers literally wouldn't let us. So we just moved on and said, we'll revisit it later. This was the perfect opportunity. I called Peter and said, hey, why don't we go back to that? We wrote a couple and they looked at it, and then our response was, meh. And then we said, why don't we do YouTube videos? And then we recorded a bunch of videos of Peter and me chatting, and then we put it on. We're like, this doesn't sound right. And then Peter came up with the idea, why not a podcast? I'm like, you and I don't think are as tech savvy to run our own podcast. And what ended up happening is, even after our maturity in the industry, we ended up learning how to craft a podcast from scratch and learn the tech aspects to the day so that we can stay on the cutting edge of tech. We own a lot of production ourselves, believe it or not. And what ended up happening is we ended up calling a couple of our good friends in the industry who we worked with. I called Brian Gildenberg. I call him the absolute, what's the right word, Peter? The daddy of retail. My friend from Kantar, Omnicom, so many other places I know him from. He's been an industry knowledge bank for me over the years, and kind of advisor as well.
He's the rankest of our friends when it comes to punditry.
And of course, we didn't know at that stage that Brian would be anchoring the every Thursday Omni Comment, which he does so well on the CPG Guys. Peter said, I got to emulate you. And he called his friend, the founder of Grocery Shop and Shop Talk and Finance Talk, Anil Agarwal. And then we started having a little bit of a competition. Who can outdo each other with guests? And then he called, I think it was Brian Sapping.
John Mount.
John Mount from Coca-Cola.
John Mount, sure.
And then I said, I got to beat that one.
We begged.
Call somebody else.
Listen, begging was not above. Just to get someone from Coca-Cola to come on, to get past corporate communications, trust me, it was not easy. But we got it, and we leveraged all of our relationships, and begging was involved. And we were fortunate.
To be fair, after having spent 27 years in the industry, our relationships go very deep, both brands, retailers, because we've worked with all of them, as well as service providers. What's changed in the last year and a half is the begging no longer is needed. Most people ask us if they can come on the show. And if we ask somebody, which we now pick very strategically who our guests are based on audience feedback of who they want to listen to, topics they want to cover, there's a process by which we qualify people. We ask them to pre-fill a document which tells us what they want to talk about. We want to make sure that the whole purpose of the show has been the same, and it's never going to change, which is the industry is rapid transforming. It was a lot about just e-commerce for a while, but now it's all about a return to the store. This podcast is and will always be about education. What's changed now is Peter and I know that the podcast is used at curriculums, in educational curriculums at brands, at retailers, at service providers. And we now feel we're obligated to the industry to have this run this like a marathon, no more sprints. And this is here for the long run. The mission will remain the same, provide the best quality education. And Bob, I'll close it up by saying the best part of this, do you know who learns the most from this? Peter and I, we're gaining education every day.
Yep. Amen. So Peter, you were actually very helpful to me in me getting my stuff off the ground, and figuring out that some of the technology isn't that difficult. And on a Saturday morning, you can actually spin some stuff up and be in full distribution for not a lot of money. So I agree with you, Sri. Like the tech, if you're willing to get just a little bit dirty, it's not that hard to figure out. Peter, maybe you could talk a little bit about how some of the advice that you would give somebody who's considering, maybe get into social media, doing some podcasting.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
Well, I think both of you touched a little bit on it. If you think you have a point of view and that it is something that the industry is missing, that it addresses a hole or a gap in the knowledge set, then yeah, lean in. And it, as Sri said, and you commented on, teaching yourself about how to do some of the infrastructure of the technology. I mean, when we started this, I had no idea how to podcast. I had to learn how to develop a podcast hosting site. I had to go find one. I had to figure out how to get our podcast listed on different podcast applications like Spotify and everything. And then I had to figure out now what are we going to use to create it? And I had to learn how to do video editing. I'd never done that before. So I had to teach myself iMovie. And then we had to start thinking about, well, it's just creating the audio video content is one thing, but then we have to figure out how to amplify it. So I had to figure out where are we going to promote this? And clearly, because we were a B2B podcast, it was going to be LinkedIn. So we had to create a LinkedIn company page. And then we knew we needed a following. So we had to figure out how to aggressively get our networks to follow us. I mean, we've gone from zero in less than 2.5 years, we've gone from 0 to nearly 16,000 followers.
Yeah.
On LinkedIn.
And Sri, your point, it's exactly right. Those 16,000 aren't just a bunch of randos. It's like people that have real jobs and real companies who are looking to you guys to learn stuff. And again, just being very transparent, I've learned a lot about what we're doing with our podcast in delivering high quality content. And Sri, again, to your point about being strategic, opportunistic early on. So I have my John Mounts, that were some of earlier guests and things, but there's a snowball effect too. And it's sort of like, oh, you got him and you got her. Yeah, I could do that. And then you just sort of kind of start building some critical mass. But the notion of bringing value to your audience and finding out what do they need to know about, what do they want to know more about, and then finding the subject matter experts. And again, as you guys were saying, one of the very cool things is you end up becoming smarter in the thing because you've got smart people who are experts in these areas. And then you just need to be a good listener and pay attention. And so I think it's something that everybody benefits from. But one core thing that I just want to make sure that people who are listening take away from this is within your reach. If you've got a message, if you've got an audience, you've identified there's a knowledge gap in the marketplace where you can add value, this is all very much within anybody's reach if they're willing to do the work.
1,000%. What I'll tell you, Bob, is about 6 weeks ago, I had a vacation in India and I spent a couple of weeks with extended relatives. And one of the things we've always wanted to do is launch our Instagram and TikTok. At this maturity in career, my daughter's of course a musician. You check her out at Rhea Raj, Rhearaj. Just launched her new song. I asked her to give me the basics of TikTok and Instagram, and she took it seriously and coached me over a couple of days. And at this age and stage, Peter and I have gone into post reel stories for Instagram every day. We've gone into TikTok every single day. One of my pet peeves in the industry, CMOs and brand marketers. I meet so many of them. They tell me Instagram is for the kids. My kids on it. That's where I'm laying from. Great. So did I. So did Peter. But your audience is there, folks. If a couple guys like Peter and me can stay on the cutting edge of transformation, invest the time to learn these things, please, folks, anyone can do it. Any one of you. None of this stuff is intimidating at the surface level. But once you go in, it's a great learning platform. And at the end of the day, our audience, which is the consumers, are changing. We got to make sure Peter and I stay on the cutting edge of where
that's exactly it. It allows you to stay current.
Absolutely.
it said, well, that's for somebody else. And then all of a sudden you turn into, well, I'm now officially old school. I've self-identified as a dinosaur.
We're Sri and I are, in the terms of the century, both playing the back nine of the course. And the fact that we could teach ourselves how to edit videos, we could figure out how to drive viral posts on LinkedIn, understanding what the algorithm does and does not promote, to create TikTok and Instagram, and to amass a community. I mean, I think the weirdest thing for Sri and me is just when we're recognized. We're a podcast. And I was on a flight to Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas, a couple of weeks ago. I wasn't wearing any merchandise or anything. And on the 3-hour flight from LaGuardia, God's my witness, several people came over to me during the flight, kneeled next to my seat and said, "Hey, you're one of the CPG guys. I just want to introduce myself." Like,
legends in our own minds. The key.
Oh my God. I'm like, and I'll tell you, we're going to a trade show this week, and just the inbound emails of, we know the CPG guys are going there. We want to meet with you. Our dance cards are pretty full. We are very.
Hey, well, before I
gracious.
become a bad host, why don't you take the opportunity, because I'm going to forget at the end. Peter, tell folks where you guys are going to be this weekend.
Oh yeah, so Sri and I are heading to Las Vegas on Sunday. We're attending the annual Grocery Shop Conference at Mandalay Bay. Sunday and Monday, Sri and I will be very busy recording episodes. But then the show really, Sri has to head to another event early Tuesday, but I'm going to be at the show on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. On the show floor, I'll be mostly at the Fetch Rewards booth, which is booth 927, except on Tuesday and Wednesday from 11 to 1, I'll be at the Criteo booth number 521. So one or the other, you can find me there. I'll be all decked out in CPG Guys. Swag is not a problem for the CPG Guys. We are shameless. In fact, when we did our accounting at the end of the year with our accountant, he was saying, "Do you know what your biggest line item expense is?" And we were thinking travel and what, and he goes, "No, swag. You guys spend an enormous amount of money on swag." And I'm like, "Yeah, we do. We totally own that." We're okay.
Sri, before you got on, I was teasing Peter when he's there. I know he's going to have a QR code on his back too, right? There you go.
He's got it. He's built it into his phone cover. So when he runs into people and they want to know the CPG Guys, he just shows them the phone and they scan it and they get our podcast. And he's got a watch band.
Oh my God! I thought you had a chip embedded.
Look, I mean, if I was honest again, our identity at CPG Guys triumphs everything else we do at this stage in life. But I'll be honest and tell you as well, that identity gives Peter and me a mission of lifelong learning.
Yeah.
And lifelong learning means when people come to the show, they educate Peter and me as well, which means Peter and I can now go head to head with the marketer, with supply chain. And boy, did those skills come in handy the last 24 months or what. I mean, and we're here on a mission. We learn a lot. We like to give back in education, and we hope others will follow us on the same journey and continue learning, because the industry is changing so fast. It's important we all stay in touch of what that change is.
Yeah.
I mean, just yesterday, we did a LinkedIn Live episode with the CPG Guys on a LinkedIn page, and we had someone there talking about contract management intelligence.
Phil Berry.
And yeah, we had Phil on. And Sri, he's like, "I didn't think about all this stuff. I'm going to take this back I'm going to talk to my procurement person and say, what are you doing about that?" I mean, we didn't know this. We just don't know.
Think about the learning, right? Artificial intelligence applied to contract management software, which means it's going to pick up the anomalies, and it's going to also keep time bound on commitments people make in contracts with reminders. Like, imagine 36 months ago, if we had this piece of software, any of us in the day jobs that we do over the course of the pandemic, how valuable for decision making that would have been. So what I'm trying to say here is the exposure Peter and I get to cutting edge tech, it's just crazy. And it helps us grow as well in what we've chosen to do in the CPG industry.
Well, so speaking of learning, and I think this is an important section, maybe camp out on for a few minutes. You guys are exposed to a lot of trends, a lot of vendors, things that smart people who are thinking about, complex problems. What are, either trends or technologies that you guys think, your audience should be especially paying attention to right now?
Peter, shall I take our favorite word?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I'll start with, if you're in the CPG industry or retail, one of the hottest words in the industry, and let's not call it a buzzword, please, because it's real, is retail media. You cannot be the person as a brand, whether you're a marketer or you're in the commercial selling function. You absolutely have to have command of what is retail media. If you're a retailer, you're launching retail media networks pretty quickly. You're going head to head with other media networks such as Google and Facebook. It's one marketing budget at the end of the day. And so ROI is very important. You have to be that retailer running an RMN that's ready to say, IROAS is what I promise you, not ROAS, because ROAS is a
You want to explain ROAS just real quick?
Return on ad spend, that it's a vanity metric that's existed for years in the industry that can be manipulated. Yes, it can be manipulated by focusing on brand keywords to deliver maximum results. Now, there are some purposes sometimes when that's the purpose, you need to do brand keywords, and so that you don't get conquested. But IROAS is a metric. Now, if you're a brand person, similarly, don't be that person that says, oh, I don't know, retail media, it doesn't have the ROAS that something else does. Seek IROAS. Challenge the retail media network on the other side to give you IROAS. Completely understand what CPC marketing is. Don't be the person that says, I'm in sales, I know trade, I don't know CPC marketing, because the world of selling and marketing is also collapsing into one. It's all about commercial functions at the end of the day. So to me, that is the number one education learning mission selling and marketing and retail needs to do together, and empower people to truly get it right. Now, I'm a big fan of the fact that retailers are actually doing retail media networks, because what it does is it brings brands closer accidentally to the lower funnel. Because today, if you thought about brick and mortar, the brand's role ends at delivering product to a warehouse, or if you're DST, you actually get to merchandise it on the shelf. But DST is such a tiny fraction of retail. But you once you've got the product over to the retailer's warehouse, it's all about brand equity dev, and then merchandising that drives units at the end of the day. But you're removed from actually being in store every single day. Retail media network actually brings you into the lower funnel, closer to a consumer than you've ever been before from a conversion perspective. Own it like a champion, folks. Be that curious person that says, I want to learn cost per click marketing or CPC marketing, and ask questions such as, what is the CPM, the cost per mile, cost per 1,000 views and audiences. Be the person that goes all the way from up top, which is audience and the cost per mile, all the way to the bottom, which is the conversion metric. And be the salesperson that owns it. Be the marketing person that has no problems working with the retailer and understanding IROAS. And I'll leave it at that.
Let me add a little context on, because we talk about retail media and the abstract. How does it come to life? There are a lot of components to it. The most prominent are product listing ads. Those are the ads that appear at the top of a search page that say sponsored or featured. Manufacturers are paying for those, much like they would pay for an ad circular in the old world, right? Why is that important? What we know from third-party digital shelf analytics companies like eFundamentals is that better than 1 in every 3 products added to a basket come from search. And when a product comes from search, 60% of those items added to basket come from the first 4 spots in the search page. That's retail media. That's why it's important. That's why we tell
above the fold is huge. If you're below the fold, it's like it's not happening.
Well, it's like, that's for sure. I mean, even on first page, the eFundamentals will tell you that 90 to 95% of basket ads in search come from page 1. So if you're on page 2, you might as well be on page 200, because you're really not in the consideration set.
The other one thing I wanted to state on retail media, and then we can move on, is retail media is one of the few platforms that exist for full funnel marketing, which means your dependence on an agency to your ownership of the full funnel is actually real. But if you still choose not to own the full funnel, well, who's to blame but yourself? So jump on, learn, and own retail media like a champion.
Yep.
Well, that's interesting, Sri, because obviously that ties back to our previous segment, which is own the technology. You need to own the technology. Is there a trend that's going on that you guys think is like, yeah, I think that might be more air than substance?
So the one that I'll pick on, and then I'll leave it to Peter to explain the details of it. I'll just drop the words in here. AI, artificial intelligence, ML, machine learning, is a word that's making a lot of routes into CPG and retail, and we hear it very often in this show as well. Very few though are taking the time to truly explain, understand, and connect it back to everyday outcomes on the job. Now, it's a trend that is going to make a difference, but it's going to make a difference only while people connect it to outcomes. I'll leave it to Peter to jump in more.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, Shri, that people think of AI as, ooh, I'm going to have a truly a Terminator like an analyst that's going to come to life and make all my decisions.
I'll be back.
No, it really is the fact that AI and machine learning is trying to take some of the routine and mundane activities and just be able to streamline and scale them. But the ability to do machine learning is really predicated upon how much of a science the actual tasks that you're performing are. If there's a tremendous amount of interpretation and requires some art, AI is really not the way that's going to get you. That the AI is there to help you so that people like you and me can focus our attention on those particular pursuits. Not that AI is going to solve and remedy those pursuits. It's trying to get us out of doing the routine stuff so we can use our brains where AI and machine learning aren't going to work.
I so agree with that. I was in social media analytics for a while, and the way that I would say it is like computers do what computers are good at, and let people do what people are good at.
Yep.
Computers are good at processing tons of data, but the ability to nuance, interpret, and really, come up with what's the right call here. I mean, that's why we have these little boxes up here.
Yeah.
Bob, what it is, we all get measured for outcomes. We don't get measured for effort unless your job is specifically an effort job, which is rare in the world. But it does exist, but it's rare. When you're getting measured for outcomes, and if you're dropping these buzzwords, I call them buzzwords because very few are willing to connect it to outcomes. But man, AI and ML, if you take it seriously, can make an ocean of a difference in the analytics world. You can process millions of data points in seconds and actually put a decision in front of a human being, making their process of decision making 1 second as opposed to trying to collect all that data yourself. But how many people are actually putting it together that way? Same thing with machine learning. Machine learning there's a lot of stuff going on in your iPhone every single day, which is nothing but AI and ML. We just haven't reconciled it in our head as that's the outcome. Facebook has done a fantastic job of AI and ML. Google is doing a fantastic job of it every day. There's no reason CPG and retail also can't. It's just we've chosen to make it like big data, a word. We need to now seek outcomes because it can make a massive difference.
Well, it's not for want of data, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So quickly, because I do want to jump into the career section on this, and sure you kind of foreshadowed mentoring and stuff. But if you had to pick something, and you may have already said it with retail media, but if you had to pick an area where CPGs, retailers, and maybe their service provider partners could do a better job of collaborating so that everybody wins, what does that look like?
I can certainly say from my perspective, where they need to collaborate is just understanding that the shopper journey is not one or the other. It's not online or in physical store. We all do all sorts of different trip missions that could or could not avail ourselves of various types of transactions, and treating e-commerce as a completely separate entity that is kind of a tack on to a joint business plan is really not going to help the brand or the retailer connect.
And that's still happening, Peter?
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. All too often. There are even the aspirations of a lot of retailers to try and bridge that gap. It depends upon the commitment and the capabilities of the buyer, and the mechanisms that have been put in place to measure and to hold people accountable and establish the KPIs that will drive success. But y'all need to be singing from the same hymnal. I mean, Walmart Connect put out a really nice piece of data a couple months ago that Sri and I just gravitated to. 82% of people who shop physical Walmart stores are opening up their mobile app, or they're opening up the Walmart site on their mobile app, and they're doing product search for information, pricing, images, reviews, whatever it is. So if you don't understand the fact that digital is not about buying online or buying online, picking up in store, and that the old way, you have to be understanding the fact that you need to deliver content and superior experiences to your shoppers wherever they are and however they want to consume it. If you can build plans to do that, you will be successful. If you don't, there are lots of other companies out there that are. I can think of one in Seattle that is more than happy to steal your shopper right from within your stores. They're walking their aisles, because if you don't have content, they got a boatload of it. And if you give your shopper a reason to open up their mobile phone and look at Amazon's app, they may see something that you don't have, and you may lose that shopper.
There's a lot of shoppers that use Amazon as their search engine.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
Their Google replacement, is just to go to Amazon and start.
That's what I do. I don't look for products in Google. I go to Amazon to look for products. Yeah. If I see a product in an ad on Instagram that I find intriguing, I go to Google to see if it's all. I mean, I go to Amazon to see if it's selling there, because I know if it is, I'm going to get a price that's about half of what I could get by doing shoppable media on Instagram.
Sri, what were you going to say?
Bob, I'm going to come back to why he does that, right? Like, if you truly broke down why he does that, is a little while ago we referred to full funnel marketing.
Yeah.
Amazon is full funnel. It's audience up top. You can find that and just focus on search. But if you want to convert them and get the basket, you can do that too. The challenge Google has is Google has never been able to conquer the lower funnel activation space. Too many clicks, too many baskets, too many loyalty programs, multiple retail outlets, etc. This is why retail media networks are so hot, because they're full funnel. And Peter just gave us an example of how Amazon ads is winning, because he goes to the platform because he can do full funnel. And if once he's searched a product, he can actually check out on the product, will seamlessly show up at his doorstep, or he can pick up from one of the many Amazon locker locations. The one area, Bob, that I think has probably changed in the industry, hopefully not permanently, but it's starting to appear that way, is the area of supply chain. I think we all can do a much better job of truly decomposing the network of how brands have been manufacturing, acquiring raw material, transporting it over to retailers, how retailers have been accepting product in appointments, in truck lanes, things of that nature, historically over decades. And all of that has worked pretty well. And the industry was a reasonably well-oiled machine, accepting the faults and failures, which worked for the most part, because the faults and failures were like a 2% error rate across the board, and we all made it work. But unfortunately, the pandemic hit and it exposed the 2% fault and failures and expanded them to 20, 30, 40% in some cases. But I don't think we're in the near horizon of the next 36 months. I don't think we're going to go back to those 2% fault and failures, looking at where the labor market is and impending recession. If there's one area, folks, we can all hold hands together. And by the way, we owe this to our boss. Who's our boss? She's our boss. Who's she? She's the shopper, the consumer. We owe it to her that we need to hold hands in supply chain, figure out our networks together, and make sure that when she comes, looks at the shelf, digital or physical, the products she's seeking are available for her. And service providers, you can do us a big favor by connecting the dots for us, bringing us solutions and capabilities so we can land product on the shelf for her.
Yeah. So
if you think that e-commerce ends when your consumer, your shopper clicks the buy button, that's only when the experience starts, because they have expectations when they click buy. And if your supply chain can't deliver on those expectations in terms of timeliness, the condition of the product, the ability to return it if you have an issue, whatever. If your supply chain can't deliver on that, then you have totally missed the point. It's not about just buying it. It's about them wanting to keep it and want to keep buying more from you.
And Peter, you made the point about Amazon earlier, and sometimes retailers will say, but I'm in the grocery space, or I'm in the pet space, or this. Well, sorry, you're in the Amazon space, because they set the bar, and to the extent that you're falling below that bar, you're disappointing people. Full stop.
Yep.
So let's make just use of the time, because go ahead, Sri. I'm sorry,
Bob. The one thing I want to point out, though, why is it the Amazon space, right? All retailers have this ability, by the way. Some of them just haven't recognized it. Retailers can be full funnel marketers and sellers because it's their platform, product is bought on. They can choose to be an Amazon. The problem is our minds are so geared. Amazon's eliteness comes out of home delivery. That's not the full, it's a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. The puzzle is built around full funnel. Now, individually, if we select just at bottom and say delivery is the important thing, Amazon's got that right. That's why I don't want to compete with them because I'm in grocery. You miss the plot. You're competing and you're in the space on full funnel. Once you understand that, it will no longer be Amazon space. It'll be, I'm working for the boss. That is her buying product in store or online, and I need to be available for her.
Super fair point. So thank you for clarifying that. By the way, I've been meaning to say hi to Risa and to Ron. Thanks, you guys, for chiming in on the comments real quick. Good to see you all. Because this is Career Club, we do like to talk career advice. A couple observations on just with you guys. You've been on the brand side, you've been on the supplier side. So I can't remember. Oh, CVS been on the retail side. So you're really kind of seeing the industry from all around and not being afraid to go, maybe take some chances and try some new things. Sri, I'll just pick up. You had talked about mentors earlier, and just what role have mentors played? And you're welcome to even call somebody out if you want, but you don't have to. And then back to the being on the back nine of our careers, how have you kind of taken that and want to pay it forward as a mentor yourself?
Absolutely. What a great question, Bob. First, I'll start by saying a career is a marathon. I meet so many people right now who have come to me with plans. I want to be this by 40. I want to be vice president at 35. Otherwise, I've failed, etc. If I use my own experiences, at some stage in life, I had a lot of those career plans. What matters is where you end up in the job that you seek towards the end, and happiness that you seek. Within your career, which is a marathon, you run sprints. And it's okay to seek sprints every now and then, because that's what a marathon runner does, so that they can actually make sure that they complete the marathon. So think of your career as a marathon. Now, if I thought of it as a marathon, the sprints that I ran, which was PepsiCo, Johnson & Johnson, a short duration for Revlon, IRI, I absolutely had mentors, and I have no problems telling the world who they were, because they did me invaluable favors. They gave me the most important favor that they did for me was they gave me feedback. Sometimes I didn't like the feedback, but they told me what I was lacking, where my opportunities are, and how I can improve, and what I can do to come across as a better, I would say, overall CPG agent for brand equity. And that's the mission I've been on last 25, 20 odd years in that career journey. And when I started at IRI, there was a leader called Mahinder Matrani who took risks in me that others probably wouldn't have been. He gave me roles and allowed me the luxury of early failure to learn from and get better. That gave me the ability to go raise my hand and say, I'll be the onsite at PepsiCo. At Pepsi, Tom Greco, who's now the CEO of Advanced Auto Parts, mentored me a lot, just coached me through the day-to-day, how to show up in meetings, basics of career. When you come, the importance of preparation before you stand in front of a crowd and you deliver any sort of results, data, analytics, speak to them, motivate, whatever the case might be. To the day jobs that I've been, last few jobs, being senior leader in sales, that has come so much in handy. And then Kevin Vivian for embracing me coming out of a 1-year rotation in IT into the dollar drug convenience channel in Frito. And on day 3, he put me in front of the customer. I think it was Quick Trip. And he said, you're going to run the JBP. And I was about 24 months rusty doing JBPs. And then Vivek Shankar, who now heads Albertsons, for literally telling me one day you're going to go full-time e-com at Frito. I can tell you right now, Bob, if Vivek hadn't done that for me and challenged me to do it right at Frito, that too, and given me the tools and resources on the how, I wouldn't be where I am today in my day job, and we would have never started the CPG guys because I wouldn't have had the guts to call Peter. So the most important thing with a mentor is you don't seek mentors, they find you. Embrace feedback that they give you. Sometimes it's not what you want to hear, but they give you feedback because they want you to be better and they want you to succeed.
That's phenomenal. Peter, how would you answer that?
Yeah, feedback is a gift. In fact, I met a mentor of Shri's when I was taking a class at Cornell Business School this past summer. She told me, and her name is Elaine Parlator. She works for PepsiCo. At the time, she was a junior level e-commerce manager just at the beginning of the real power of the industry. And when Shri was offered the role by Tom Greco to launch e-commerce at Frito-Lay, he called her up and said, "You got to tell me, I've always wanted to be a salesperson. This could be the kiss of death for me." And she sat down and told Shri, no, you are at the beginning of something that is going to get very big, and let me explain to you why. And he took that feedback to heart, and he decided to pursue the role at Frito. And it's all because, she gave him the encouragement and the knowledge and that feedback to really decide upon it. I would say that I've had a couple of mentors that have meant a lot to me. The most prominent, after I got out of business school, I went to work for Hart's Pet Care. There was a gentleman there named Jim Shea. Jim had spent most of his career at French's Mustard and Sales. He joined Hart's towards the end of his career. He was the corporate VP of sales. We were on a business trip once, and I just remarked to him, "Jim, you got to tell me, whenever we travel together, it's pretty hard for us we show up at the airport, we meet at the gate, and from the minute till we get on the plane, we're on the plane, we get off the plane, we go to the rental car, we've probably run into 2 people that you know on every trip. And it's not that you just know them, they're completely conversant in what's going on in your life." And this is pre-internet, right? This is early 90s. I'm like, "How do you do it?" And he taught me some great lessons. He said, "Every morning, Peter, I spend the first half hour of my day tending to my network. My network is not a destination, it is a journey." And what I do is I break out, and a lot of people on this call won't understand this, but the Rolodex. He pulled out his Rolodex and he would flip through, and on the backs, he turned the Rolodex around, and on the back side of each card, he kept notes. He wrote them in pencil so he could erase them afterwards, but he kept the most recent notes of when he last spoke with someone and what they talked about. And he would spend the first half hour of every day finding people that he hadn't talked to, that he thought it was important to keep touch with, and he would call them, or he would send them an email, and he would say, "Listen, I saw this," or, "Hey, last time we spoke, your daughter was getting ready for a big recital. How did that go?" And what he taught me was it's like keeping that pot of soup on the back burner on simmer. Because when you actually need it, it's really easy to get that to full heat. And you got to think about it like, if you need something from someone, and the only time you ever talk to someone is when you need something from them, trust me, they will know that. Because I've got someone in my life right now, the only time I ever hear from him is when he needs a connection. And that's when I just ignore it. But if you've been connected to that person and made the effort, when you actually need some help, they will bend over backwards to help you with that connectivity. And, in many ways, Bob, I'm really grateful to you for that as well, because you helped me at a challenging point in my mid-career. And you and I have stayed in touch, and we feed each other, and it's wonderful, and it's great. The other person I'll mention, Steve Frenda, who was at Path to Purchase Institute. Everybody knows him. He's an institution. He was a tremendous inspiration, not just on the golf course, but off the golf course, and really taught me how to think on your feet. I loved going to meetings with Steve. I'd meet him at the airport, and he would ask me about 10 questions as we were driving to whatever meeting we had. And he carried around a big bag that had about 100 acetates in it. And based upon the answers I gave him, he'd pull out the 10 or 15 acetates he needed. He'd put it into a manila folder. We were ready to give the presentation.
and acetate. Now that's old school.
Yes, and the last one I'll mention is a terrific woman. Her name's Melissa Studzinski. She was the VP of loyalty marketing at CVS and the person who hired me, and she was fierce. And she drove the numbers, and she inspired me to be very curious about everything I do. She threw me in the deep end and said, "You've got a week to learn how to swim, and after that, the floaties are coming off. You better know how to swim." But she was always there to help me and inspire me. And she also had the best bag of snacks hidden underneath her desk, because when I met her, she was about 8 months pregnant. So she was just, if ever I was hungry, I would just go into her office and grab a snack. But I love Melissa. She is one of my favorites.
Now, Sri, I know you want to say something. We've got a listener that says, maybe a dumb question, but is your podcast now a consulting business, or you still have your day jobs?
Let me answer. Let me take that one, Peter. We very much have our day jobs. Both of us work in developing brand equity. You can go look up on LinkedIn what we do for our day jobs. But if you have a question for us, if you listen to a podcast, you're going to get a lot of advice and you're going to get a lot of knowledge as it is. But every now and then a service provider will seek out some learning from us, and I feel, again, Peter and I owe this back to the industry with our collective expertise of 50, 60 odd years. If you have something to ask us, ask us. We're not going to shy away from trying to coach you, because that is our way of all the mentorship and the gift we've received from it, of giving it back to you as well. So don't hold back and worry about we have day jobs, etc. Obviously, if you're going to ask us questions that compete with the day jobs we do, you're not going to get answers from us. That's just simple ABCs of common sense. But we want to give back to you, so don't be shy. We encourage entrepreneurship.
Yep.
We'll coach you if you seek it from us. The one thing I wanted to mention about network is the word work at the end of network. What I've learned from Peter and been inspired is, he mentioned about giving back to the network. Peter's so much better than me at it is. And what Peter does is, when he's outside his home turf of Connecticut, wherever he goes, Chicago, Atlanta, you name the place, Peter will make it a point to have lunch, break bread, lunch or dinner with somebody from his network. And that's how he gives back. He stays in touch. I encourage everybody to do the same. I am learning how to do that from Peter every single day.
Yeah.
Let
it'll
me
be
say one
remiss,
thing.
Bob. It'll be a mistake on my part if I don't drop Brian Gildenberg's name in there. To the day when I got to bounce something at the industry off, Brian, that's where I go for an opinion. It's not magic that Brian is the omni-comment Thursdays on the CPG Guys.
Yeah, Peter?
No, I was I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought. But I will just say that giving back is important, and the reason I meet and my last trip to Chicago, I had 2 dinners one night and 2 breakfasts the next morning. That's because when you're at home and you've got 2 full-time jobs and a 3.5-year-old, that's the only time you get to socialize is when you're on the road. So I'm just judicious with my time. That was what I wanted to say.
Guys, I want to be mindful of the time. We're at the bottom of the hour.
Yep.
So I want to thank, first of all, you guys. This has been phenomenal. I've got more questions I would have loved to have gotten to, but time isn't going to permit. But you guys are doing such a great service to the industry. I'm very thankful that you guys carved out some time with us today and our audience. So thank you for doing that. Peter, one more time, do you want to tell folks how they can find your grocery shop?
Yeah, just go by the Fetch Rewards booth number 927. I'll be there Tuesday and Wednesday, middle of the day. I'm going to be over at the Criteo booth, which is 521. But that's the best way. Or just reach out to us on LinkedIn. Just send a message and tell me you wanna connect. I've got plenty of time on Tuesday, Wednesday, and particularly Thursday, because I'm not flying out till the red eye that night. It's either that or I'm driving out to the Hoover Dam. So give me a reason not to have to get in the car and drive out to see a body of water that is very low right now.
Very low. All right. So we're going to wind it up here. Thank you guys again. I think, Peter and Sri, that you guys have inspired a lot of what I'm doing here. Coming up episodes, just kind of representative of that. We've got the CEO of SHRM coming up next week, which is Society of Human Resources Management. We've got Kirk Perry, CEO of IRI plus NPD now, right? Paco Underhill, who I'm sure you guys know from Why We Buy and How We Eat. Kim Finyo, who we were talking about earlier from CoreSite, is going to be on as well. So you guys have made a big change in me, which I am eternally grateful for. So thank you for kind of modeling the behavior. And Sri, just back to your point about, continue to add value to people. That's the most important thing. So with that, thank you guys, everyone, and appreciate you listening. This is always available as a podcast when we're done. So have a great week. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.